All right, well, I'm really excited about this. It is time for the keynote presentation. This app, one of the apps we're going to be hearing from, Tinder. On Muni Home yesterday, the lady sitting next to me was on Tinder, just like burning through guys at a rapid clip. Clearly there's something very addictive about this. Anyway, let's bring him up onto the stage right now. Doug McMillon, technology reporter from Bloomberg. He's going to be talking with Greg Tseng from Tagged and Sean Rad from Tinder. Let's do it, guys. All right.
Thanks, Casey. Hey, guys. Great to be here. Sean was just saying this is his first tech conference he's done with Tinder, so it's a very kind of special event for us. We're talking about meeting new people today, and this is something that we're increasingly doing online, and increasingly we're doing it on cool new services for mobile phones, like Tinder and Tagged, and some of these other services that we've been talking about today. So I want to start maybe kind of broadly in thinking about years into the future. How do you think the future of meeting new people will change? How will technology change this behavior?
Okay, so I think if we think about 20 years ago, pre-internet, how do we meet people? We were, you literally had to be physically next to someone in order to meet them. So there's a very limited selection of people, and the interactions would be kind of slow, and it would take some time. And overall, I think social discovery was just left to chance. Then we started meeting people online. Now we're in the mobile revolution. And but I think as we keep on progressing, whether it's through Google Glass or other devices in the future, we have a vision at Tagged for social discovery where most new conversations between people that exist in the whole world will start online. And we have a product vision where anyone, any place, anytime will be able to use a device to instantly connect with interesting new people. And that device could be a smartphone today, but could be Google Glass tomorrow, could be Google Contacts after that. At some point, it'll just be it'll just be a chip in your brain. But imagine that in the future, most conversations will start online, and anyone, anywhere, anytime will be able to instantly connect with interesting new people.
So we have a slightly different perspective at Tinder and sort of what I see as the future. I think technology is going to become an enabler, allowing us to meet more people in a more efficient manner. So take Tinder, for example. Our focus is on enabling you to meet more people and reducing and taking away the barriers between you and meeting that person. So if you look at sort of the psychology or the process of meeting new people, you're either a hunter, the way we see it, or you're being hunted. And when you're a hunter, you're constantly when you're going after, it could be under any context. You're going after a girl that you like, or you're going after a business relationship. You're constantly have this fear of rejection that is preventing you from moving forward. And if you're being hunted, you have a lot of, there's a lot of noise coming at you. And that creates this like social barrier and awkwardness. And at Tinder, we think we are sort of breaking that barrier and allowing you to make more connections at a faster rate. And I think the goal of technology is to sort of make things more efficient, and mobile allows us to make things, bring things closer to you and make them more of like an accessory to your daily life than something you do at home and just because physically you're taking your device with you. So for us, it's about giving you sort of this tool that you could take with you anywhere that helps you or enables you to meet the person that you want to meet around you.
Great. I want to come back to the hunter and the hunted later on because it's an interesting kind of philosophy. But let's talk about matchmaking and kind of this idea of, is there a science of matchmaking? So I think a lot of folks are OkCupid users, and OkCupid has a cool blog where they publish a lot of interesting data about what they see in terms of how people meet using their service. One of the things I pulled out was one of the best corollary questions between will you get along with someone else is your answer to the question, do you like horror movies? As a strong correlation to will you meet someone. Another thing that they said was a predictor of whether someone is likely to sleep with you on the first date is, do you like the taste of beer? So OkCupid is going out and looking at this data.
Do you like the taste of beer?
Yes.
There's gonna be an auction for a date with Greg and Sean later on. We'll get to that later on.
Oh, I thought yes meant you wouldn't sleep on the first date.
So is there science behind matchmaking, or are they just making this stuff up?
So the answer is yes, but it is not just science. So there's science, there's art, there's human nature. So there actually is a lot of science, and we have social scientists on our staff to study the so-called science of friendship or the science of human attraction. And they find that there are actually a lot of factors that increase the likelihood of a good relationship. So such things include similar religious and political views, similar level of intelligence, similar level of physical attractiveness, believe it or not. Shared interest is one that's often cited, but is actually kind of in the middle, and there are a few others. And so these things all combine to increase the likelihood of a good match, of a good relationship, but nothing is guaranteed. And so I think, back to Sean's point about the vision of social discovery, our services can use a great product design backed by great matching algorithms in order to most likely create good matches. But there's a point at which our services end and human nature has to begin. And the rest is really taken care of by two people and how they interact and what they say to each other, body language, and all the other things that then cause a great relationship to happen.
So there's some things that technology can't replace.
Yes.
Yeah, the way we see it is we're as a company, and our core competency is not in defining what makes two people compatible. I'm sure there's a lot of studies out there. There's a lot of people focusing on that area of a relationship. We're primarily focusing on creating a connection where we're trying to put you in touch with somebody and let you figure out organically whether that person's compatible for you. And that's sort of our philosophy, that compatibility doesn't matter unless you have the strength to approach and connect with that person. So that's sort of like an afterthought of what we do. And our goal, like at Tinder, most of our users have matches, about 30 matches, I think, is our average number of matches per user. And I think you go through those list of relationships and you decide sort of who's right for you. One more thing is, if you're looking at sort of the science of the approach or sort of making a connection, I think the factors that sort of encompass everything Greg just said, that enable you to go up to somebody and make you feel comfortable, it all comes down to sort of credibility, and it comes down to comfort. And in Tinder, what we're doing is we're putting the element of credibility and comfort at your fingertips by saying, this individual has this many common friends with you, and these are the common friends. And we're saying that this person's profile is connected to Facebook, so it's very difficult for them to create an alternative identity. And we're trying to retain sort of that identity and that and the truest representation of that individual and what connections point they have with you, so we can create this comfort level where you feel comfortable approaching that person.
So Sean, I was using Tinder yesterday, and I was asking a bunch of folks about how they use Tinder, and frequently the behavior that I see is this. It's sort of becoming sort of the Angry Birds, the new Angry Birds. As you can sit there and it's a game, and you kind of just cycle through people. And the thing I notice is that there are a lot. It's a volume. There's kind of an active going out and casting a huge net that you could never do before just walking into a singles bar. So the question I'm getting to is: are these apps, are these services helping us reach more people and form more relationships, or is the goal ultimately to refine down to better and higher quality relationships?
I think it's a combination of both, but Tinder, I can speak from my own personal scenario, personal situation as a user. I think we were talking about this over the phone the other day. Prior to Tinder, I probably would meet 1 to 2 new people organically a month, just because I'm so busy and I'm working all the time. Now I have more relationships and more connections than I really know what to do with. There is no shortage of people who I've met through Tinder and want to hang out, and I think that really changes the dynamic for people. If you're a person who has trouble sort of making a connection, Tinder can help you. If you're a person who doesn't have trouble but just doesn't have the time, Tinder can help you. If you're somebody who really loves meeting new people, again, Tinder is sort of like a fit for you because it allows you to do that more often and more efficiently. But then again, quality is critical, and we focus on quality so much. So it is volume, but there is a quality. Like at Tinder, we do a lot to make sure that the people you're seeing, even though you're sort of swiping and going back and forth, have a lot of relevance to you. Based on what your interests are, who your common friends are, we sort of rank and order people based on their relevance to you. So that along with sort of creating this comfort level between you and the other person, knowing that that person has liked you and you've liked them back, and that you have these common friends and these common interests, I think is a recipe for a great starting point to a conversation or relationship.
There's a limit on it, though. I mean, sometimes it's called the Dunbar number, 150 people. Isn't there a limit to the relationships you can have, and don't you sometimes hit that ceiling?
Yeah, I mean,
I have enough time in the day. And
you're getting more opportunities than you were before with Tinder, but ultimately you're going to maintain a certain number of relationships consistently. So, I have a lot more options than I did before. I don't have more relationships necessarily than I did before, just because I think as humans, we have a capacity to sort of manage a certain number of relationships at a given time. But the point is, without technology, without Tinder, without Tagged, without OkCupid, without these other services, there are missed opportunities happening every day. I mean, we have stories on Tinder ranging from like people thanking us because they're getting married, people telling us that they reconnected with their long lost love, people entering the app as sort of not really taking it seriously, but then ending up in a serious relationship. So I think there is this game aspect of Tinder, but I think the end result is something very meaningful and serious. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're seeing left and right.
I would agree with that, and maybe to put some hard numbers on it. So Tagged has over 300 million registered members, and there's no way you can meet 300 million people, but that's the reach of Tagged. And so our job is to figure out which first 10 people to recommend to you, which first 50 or 100 people to recommend to you, and then let human nature do the rest. So, if you do the math, that's literally less than 1 in a million. So it is a needle in a haystack. And I don't know how many users are on Tinder, but you can only go through so many as well. And so I'd say the quantity aspect is there's just so much more reach now that you can have via these services, but you do need to have great relevance in order to find the quality. And so it's both quantity and quality.
These guys are agreeing on more things than they should be because they are actually competitors. So Tinder has just blown up in the past year. Everyone's talking about it. I think it just organically came up in a lot of the panels this morning. More recently, Tagged has launched a competing app called Swoon, which looks pretty similar to Tinder. What do you guys see as kind of your competitive moats here? This is a kind of a booming market. There are probably a dozen other apps that we're not talking about. Who's going to be the winner here, or is there enough to go around? Kind of how do you see competition evolving in this space?
Yeah. So my view on it is actually more holistic. So we're all here at a social discovery conference trying to make social discovery a thing, trying to achieve our shared mission of social discovery. And if you look at just all the dating 1.0 sites so far, I don't think there is one winner necessarily. And I actually look at it more holistically as we are actually all on the same team trying to make social discovery happen. And Tagged has been at it for 5 or 6 years now in social discovery. There's still so much to achieve between now and this vision that we talked about in the future. So I look at it as quote unquote co-opetition. Sometimes your closest your closest competitors are also your closest collaborators. And I'm friends with all the various players in social discovery, and we generally help each other out.
That's really sweet.
Yes. I'm a sweet guy.
He likes beer. I think the differences lie in the teams and their philosophies. So, on the surface, Swoon might look very similar to Tinder, very similar to Tinder. But I think if you sat down and really understood Greg's goals, they're probably very different than our goals. Yes, I think the ultimate space we're playing in is social discovery, and we can coexist. I don't think there's, in any category, a player that owns, particularly if you're thinking about sort of the international landscape, there's no player that owns everything. So it's a big world out there, and there's definitely room for us to coexist. But I think also the context of these apps will be very different. The users, the behavior in Swoon might be very different than Tinder, just as the users or the behavior in Facebook is different than Tinder. You go to Facebook for a certain type of media that you're trying to broadcast. You go to Twitter for a certain type of media that you're trying to broadcast, and you go to Instagram for a certain type of media you're trying to broadcast, because the audiences and the context varies. And I think you might find a similar sort of dynamic with these social discovery apps.
Yeah. All right, but if we want to talk more specifically about this sort of Meet Me style feature and how this will develop, the way we've looked at it is really this was pioneered by Hot or Not back in 2001, the sort of mutual matching Meet Me dating type service. Tag launched its Meet Me service in 2008, and today we have 300 million registered users forming 100 million connections on Tag every single month. Now we're moving into the mobile world, and so Tinder and Swoon and some others are kind of mobile-only Meet Me products on smartphones. And so one way that we have thought about differentiating is Tinder's audience is generally US and young. So kind of the college and post-college crowd. So we've decided to go a little bit older, a little bit classier, and it's kind of the 25 to 35 young professional crowd. And so that's one way that we're thinking about the market, and also thinking about international. And I think, a few other advantages we have would be the 5+ years of experience that we have running Meet Me, and having good matching algorithms and such, and plus just having a huge base of users and a lot of cash in order to get Swoon off the ground.
Yeah, but again, I think the if you really spent time and asked me what is the vision for Tinder, and you asked Greg what is the vision for the Meet Me class of products at Tagged, it would be there would be a very different picture painted. And I think not only the users would be different, not only the goals would be different, not only the philosophies within the companies would be different as to how do you connect to different people. So I think ultimately there might be a winner. Or maybe there already is, but I think there's still room for everyone to sort of get their piece of the market.
Now we got them fighting a little bit. Okay, so here's a question from the audience. Greg, you started bringing up mobile, and these are both heavily mobile products and companies that we're talking about. Kind of a deeper question on this. Is there a difference in platforms, iOS and Android? Is Tinder on both iOS and Android?
On iOS, but we're coming to Android very soon.
Okay, give a date for that. Any next month?
It's weeks, not months.
Okay,
so very soon.
What's your philosophy between iOS and Android? Do you see a difference between these two platforms in the space that you're in?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Tagged and Swoon are both on iOS and Android. In terms of differences, I mean, you can look at it in different ways. From the developer standpoint, it is in some ways actually much easier to develop and test on Android, because Android gives a lot more permissions, and you don't have to wait for approval and things like that. Maybe I'll just leave it at that, and I'll let Sean talk about his thought.
There's a give or take, because yes, that's true for Android, but then at the same time you have more versions and variants of device to develop for, versus iOS. It's sort of primarily one device, one version that you're optimizing for. But I think they're both formidable sort of, they both obviously Android has a larger presence internationally. And for a company like Tinder, who's thinking on a global scale, you have to have both. And the only reason we have iOS now and Android's coming versus the other way around is because the team had a core competency in iOS, and you have to start somewhere. When you're building a company, you have to prioritize and focus, and we prioritized iOS, not necessarily because it's better, because I think they're both fantastic platforms, but because it's what we understood. And now we have a larger team, and we have a great team that understands Android as well. And we're going to do something very interesting there coming soon.
Cool. Well, we're running out of time, but I promise we get back to this hunter and hunted, and the psychology of dating. I think it's a really fascinating area, and you have some interesting thoughts on this, both of you. Is kind of, how do you see the psychology of dating changing? I was talking to someone yesterday whose brother was an avid Tinder user, and before this he had never used online dating sites because he had felt, embarrassed about doing that, or there's a kind of a fear of rejection involved in that. How do you think the psychology of dating is being changed by services like you guys?
Yeah. So I'll touch on the social stigma, and then maybe you can talk about psychology. So I think that new mobile-only apps like Swoon and Tinder are continually lowering the barrier of social stigma. So, and thus, these apps are able to grow much more organically through word of mouth. So, historically, if you think about it, dating itself has no social stigma. I mean, you talk about dating with your friends all the time, but somehow dating sites have always had some level of social stigma. But I think that now that we're entering this mobile-only world, where meeting someone on your smartphone just feels a lot more personal and a lot more natural than meeting someone while sitting at a desk at your computer. Plus, the use of Facebook Connect allows you to sign up so quick, so you don't feel like you're going through all this work just to try to get a date. And it also lets the whole experience feel a lot more safe and real, because you're now Facebook connected. There's a minimum of 50 Facebook friends required to use the product, and then you're seeing real Facebook photos and names. And so the combination of real names, real photos, easy sign up, and mobile only, I think really drives down the social stigma, so it's that a lot of people talk about it all the time now, and now I think it gives even more power for dating sites and apps to grow by themselves.
The pool of the audience is potentially bigger here.
I think so. I think you guys did a survey about what percentage of your users had previously used a dating app, and for the majority of the users, Tinder was the first one.
Yeah. The majority of our users still to this day, at least when we do these sort of sample studies, report that they've never used another dating app. Although I wouldn't even call Tinder a dating app per se, it's more of a social discovery app or a way to meet new people in your area. But I think the stigma lies in what those products are solving, the problems that they're solving. When you look at the hunted relationship, a lot of these social discovery products that have been in existence until now make that problem worse. And I think that's where the stigma comes from, because if I am, the person who's always being hunted, now that I'm on Match or any property, or even LinkedIn or even Facebook, it's easier for people to reach out to me and find me, and then it becomes increasingly more difficult for me to filter through the noise. And if I'm somebody who might have a desire to meet somebody, while in the real world I might not cross the room and come say hi to you, online it's very easy to click a button because it's impersonal. So now there's an increased level of rejection. Tinder solves that to some degree, because we're sort of mirroring the dynamics you have in the real world, and we're just making them more efficient. And I think that's why we have done a great job of removing the stigma. It's not because of branding. It's not because it's pure utility. We are solving a problem that I think, or we're solving the problem from an angle that hasn't been approached before, and that's what's removing the stigma. So I think users are a little smarter than that. I wouldn't just say it's because online dating is bad, because I don't think it's bad. It works for a lot of people. A lot of the most successful dating sites skew older in age because it solves a problem for an older demographic that it doesn't solve for a younger demographic. And I think we're solving problems for a younger demographic that we don't necessarily solve for an older demographic yet. So it's a result of what you're focusing on as a product.
It's a fascinating discussion. We're out of time, unfortunately. Thank you guys for joining us. I'm told that there's a silent auction for a date with Greg and Sean. It's going to be in a cocktail reception later, so everyone make sure you come for that. Let's have a hand for these guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.